Welcome to Bird Burger. In last month's video, I paid you guys to edit my wildlife photos. In that video, I also opened up a forum to see you guys submit photos to me in order for me to edit your images. Now, I got some pretty decent submissions from some of you, but I also asked for some of you to submit me pretty challenging images that were shot pretty horribly in RAW, but had some potential with nice tweaking. So today, I'll be editing on screen the worst and best wildlife photos in order to try to turn them into something even better. You know what's crazy is that we just started Bird Burger 3 months ago. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before my birthday on May 16th, and if I do, I'll go live for the first time ever to answer any of your questions you have about wildlife photography or anything else related. So if you want to help make that happen, it's easy. Just share the channel with a couple of your best friends or share it on social media. It's been awesome to see the community that's grown so far, and I think we have so much more good work to do. So looking through the first image here, we got a really cool image of a Bohemian waxwing from a guy named Psycho, and it was a really nasty, gnarly image when it was shot originally. However, the adjustment of it looks really good. So while this image looked really poor potentially, there was a really easy fix to it, which was switching it into a high key image essentially. So you can see that as I edited it, the important part here in this high key image is to make sure that it's truly high key. By on the histogram, there becomes a point when all of the histogram white on the top end is totally off screen, no longer a part of the image, and it's completely blown out. So that's very important to do, as well as a recent tip I actually learned from a student in one of my mentorship programs recently who taught me kind of the trick of in Lightroom, if you change the background to white, then you can visually see when the white is totally blended out of the image. But once we got this image into a high key edit, it was pretty simple from there on out. There wasn't anything too big that I felt like needed to be adjusted, but it looked so much better. And the crop looks a little bit better too, in my opinion. So high key images are a really great solution in situations like this where it may feel really dull when you initially shoot it, but you can adjust it into something much more creative and something much more cool. So that was the first image, and I really liked the results. The second image that I wound up editing was a little bit trickier. So in this image, you can see this is an image by a guy named Donald Sheath. And Donald Sheath's got this really cool image of a great gray owl. However, it's very cluttered and very difficult to kind of, I guess, make this image feel aesthetically very isolated and nice when you're looking at this subject. So that was the biggest concern for me. How can I isolate this subject more than he currently is? Because there's a lot of distractions going on in this image. So what I did to start out was got it into the correct crop, the crop that I was looking to kind of finalize it in at the end. And while normally I wouldn't go this tight, I felt like in this scenario it was helpful for making sure that your eyes stay locked on the subject. Now, while I could go through the tedious process of kind of like taking out all those twigs and branches in Photoshop, that's not the purpose of today's video. I wanted to show you guys in Lightroom really how you can edit these images to make them look better. I found that initially doing an S-curve really helps to get all the exposure in this image correctly because the owl is much darker than the background behind him. Next, I noticed that the color was a really useful tool in helping to isolate this bird. So what I did was I took the greens and yellows in the backgrounds and kind of shifted them on the HSL curve to all be green. That was a very powerful tool in helping simplify the background and not make it quite so distracting. That way your eyes can truly engage with the great gray owl itself. To add on to that fact, what I also did was pull the saturation down on the aquas and the blues because the great gray owl winds up being a little bit bluish from the shade, and to get rid of that helps isolate him again color wise a little bit more than before. So I desaturated those aquas and blues quite a lot. Finally, I did a little bit of a masking on the eyes. You can do this really easily in Photoshop, but this is kind of the Lightroom version of it that I do, where I just masked out the eyes and popped the eyes a little bit more. Since an owl is so engaging and the eyes are such a big feature, I felt like this was an important aspect and an important little thing to keep included in there. Now, moving into the next image, this is an image from Gunnar Dressler. You guys have probably seen him before on YouTube. Amazing wildlife photographer, one of my good friends on YouTube, and I asked him to send me over a picture texture, and he sent me over some from his Badger project on YouTube. A really cool project. I'd recommend you go check it out in the description below through the links if you're interested. But Gunnar sent some really interesting images from that project, and I decided to take a much different route than the way that he had edited them before. So what I did in Gunnar's images, I decided to turn it into more of a nighttime type of look, kind of similar to what I did with my crow's images in the past. I did that with this Badger image. First of all, I used a mask to really isolate down the exposure and focus on the Badger from a lighting and exposure standpoint. But the other important and key aspect of this image was making it very cold, making it feel like it's nighttime, right? So I pulled it quite a bit more blue, and then I did some other minor adjustments to really help keep that contrast and keep it feel a little bit more like the moonlight is spotting the Badger itself and not everything is seen too visibly. So most everything else fades away and you kind of just catch a little glimpse of the Badger through the brush. So overall, I really like this edit. I like this result, and it was a really fun one to edit myself. Now next, let's hop into another wildlife photography image by another wildlife photography YouTuber, a really young dude, Max Gindel. Some awesome stuff on wildlife photography on YouTube, and really cool seeing someone as young as him pursue it in the way that he is. He sent me over this image of some type of a duckling. I forget what type it was, but very, very simple kind of portrait, you know, down in the water type of image. And what I felt like really was the best thing to do with this image was just to give it a little bit more life, keep it pretty simple, and do some minor cropping adjustments. So what I did was really just bring out the color. I helped pop the image a little bit more with some extreme whites and some extreme dynamic range on that top end, really bringing out that contrast and helping it feel a little bit more bright and contrasted. While with the colors, I not only brought up the saturation and vibrance some, but specifically on the green and yellow HSLs, brought up that saturation. They really give a lot of color and life to this image, and I like the results. In regards to the cropping, I wound up cropping it down to where it's more of a thirds framing, and the eyes and the beak of the duckling is kind of on a third, and I like the results of that as well. So overall, pretty great image, and I really like the results of it. I think he did a fantastic job with capturing it as well. Now moving into the next image, this is by a guy called @birdwatchingcollection on Instagram, and who's actually one of my students, so he submitted into this video. And this image is a pretty challenging one in that I felt like I couldn't get the subject engagement as much as I wanted to, and because of that, I feel like this was actually the hardest one for me to edit of any image that was sent over, because I really didn't know what to focus on in this image. So it was a little bit more confusing to me in what I should do with it. With that being said, what I tried to do was help isolate the duck a little bit more in terms of color and exposure, but really just sell it into the mood of the scene and the swamp, rather than really try to isolate this bird and make it all about the bird. I don't think that would have paid off as well as I would have hoped. So what I really allowed for is really just a lot of space for the landscape to be what it is and be a little bit moody. I did kind of like a flattening in the tone curve at the beginning of my edit, just to really keep the details and keep the mood in the deep, deep shadows in the background between the trees. And I think that was one of maybe the most selling points of this image. But beyond that, nothing too crazy, but I like the results of the image as well. Now lastly, let's hop into one more image that I really liked. And this was a fun one by i.espinoza94 on Instagram. And I loved this crow image that he captured. It reminded me a lot of my own crow experience that I had at night. This one wasn't captured at night, but it has a similar mood and vibe. And so I decided to push it into the place of where it felt like it was captured at nighttime. So one of the first things I did here was make the temperature all kind of adjust correctly. So I went for, again, that blue nighttime, and I really like the mood and the vibe that it sets. It feels a little bit creepy, a little bit eerie, and really helps just accentuate a mood and a scene in this image. So I like pushing it in that direction. One of the most challenging things for me was the clutter. I didn't have a great solution to that other than really bring that contrast to make the bird pop in silhouette in this image. Also, I did include cropping it down to land the crow on a third in this image, and I think that was better than just leaving it at the original crop. But beyond that, not too many adjustments made, really beyond that color adjustment that I did initially that sells this image, making it more purple and blue. And overall, a very cool image and a very well shot image with a very very good artistic vision. So props to I.Espinosa for that. So remember, we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by my birthday on May 16th in order for me to go live and answer any of your guys' questions. If you're interested in learning more about editing your images and the ways that I edit my images, you can check out my website in the description below. I offer one-on-one mentorships in which I help you learn how to edit your wildlife photography photos well, along with a plethora of other things. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next Bird Burger episode.